Adrian, roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vignell, Councilmember Cavallari,
Here.
Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Ellison,
Here.
Councilmember Duque,
Here.
and Councilmember Paddock.
Present.
The Mayor Pro Tem informed me a little bit ago that she is under the weather and will be unable to attend tonight. So can we have a motion to excuse?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Items communication. Barb, you have the mic. Name, address, 3 minutes, please.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place, Southeast Mill Creek. Thank you, Mayor. The Memorial Day ceremony was a very respectful and well-attended event. I'm grateful for all the speakers who had such touching speeches. I wish to thank Josh, one of our public works workers, for making sure the area was clean, plus helping set everything up. Also, I want to thank Jody and Scott for a well-planned event, which went off smoothly and reverently. Having Mill Creek hosting such an event to honor those who selfishly gave up their lives so we can have our freedom gives me pride and joy to live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Anyone else? Anyone online? Mr. Nelson, would you care to address the council? Take that as a no. There'll be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. So before we get into the substance of the meeting, we're going to begin with the annual presentation in honor of Pride Month. Thank you, Councilmember Paddock, for the Pride buttons. Appreciate it. But I'd like to read a proclamation on behalf of the council. Whereas equality of opportunity and freedom from discrimination are among the basic inalienable moral rights of every person, necessary for the development and exercise of our most vital capacities and preconditions of human flourishing. And whereas our nation was founded upon and is guided by a set of principles that includes that every person has been created equal, that each has rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and that each shall be accorded the full recognition and protection of law. And whereas over the course of our nation's history and sphere of its moral recognition has expanded to include many persons previously marginalized, disenfranchised, and subjugated, yet this recognition remains imperfect and this expansion incomplete. And whereas 2015's landmark Supreme Court decision guaranteeing marriage equality in all 50 states was a historic victory for LGBT Americans, ensuring dignity for same-sex couples and greater equality across state lines. Whereas lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBT is observed annually in the month of June to honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising and to recognize the impact that lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals have had on his history locally, nationally, and internationally. And whereas June 2023 marks the 53rd anniversary of annual LGBTQ Pride observances, now therefore, I, Brian Holtzclaw, the mayor of the city of Mill Creek, on behalf of the city council, do hereby proclaim June 23 as Pride Month in Mill Creek. Signed today. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Martin, to introduce our next presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Before our Councilmember Mead comes up, I'd like to just give a short synopsis of his career. It's quite impressive. And so Jared Mead grew up in Snohomish County. He now lives currently with his family in the city of Mill Creek. He went to the University of Washington, was an investment banker after he got out of college. In 2014, he was elected to the Planning Commission of the city of Mill Creek. And soon after that, he was a city council member here as well. In 2018, Jared was elected to the State House of Representatives in the 44th Legislative District. He served on 3 different boards, including Transportation, Environment and Energy, as well as the Ecology and Workforce Development Committee. In April of 2020, Jared was appointed to serve as District 4 County Council member. He ran for election to retain his seat in 2021. Currently, Councilmember Mead serves as the Snohomish County Council Chair. Jared.
Oh, thank you. Where'd you get that bio, by the way? Pull up a website or something? Didn't expect that. Well, thank you for the introduction. Hello, council. It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be back. I've been in this room a few times since I left, but not in this capacity. And I noticed some changes already with the tech. You've all got cameras pointed in your faces now. And no TV or anything. There's some old faces that I love serving with, some new faces who I'm really getting to enjoy meeting now and getting to know and working with. So it's good to be back. What I'm really here for today is to just provide a brief update of what we've done previously on the county council, budget wise, hopefully oriented a little bit so that it's relevant to you all in Mill Creek. Talk a little bit, very, very briefly about what some of the preliminary plans are for next year's budget or this year's budget conversation for next year. And then really want to have a conversation with you all, hear your questions, do some back and forth on what you think is important for the city, what I should be hearing as the chair of the council, but also as the representative of Mill Creek on the Snohomish County Council, what I should be bringing back to those budget conversations. So I don't know how much time I have. I'm going to bust through this, and I haven't coordinated with Mayor Holtzclaw on how we want to do questions. Feel free to just cut me off, throw something at me to get me to stop, and or we can wait till the end and we can dive in that way. So first slide up there, I wanted to include that picture. If we could just go back very briefly. And thank you for doing this and setting this up, by the way. You have an amazing clerk. He's been very responsive and helpful. So the first slide right there, I just wanted to leave the map up there. We did do a redistricting. So our map looks a little bit different. We still share the district, Mill Creek does, with Mount Lake Terrace and Briar and North Bothell, but the boundaries have changed a little bit, which is relevant when we're talking about growth and zoning, some of the housing, and also some of the law enforcement and public safety stuff, because we did grow a little bit to the north west. And so I just wanted to highlight that we do have a little bit of a different map up there as of this year. So now we can move on in the slide. Thank you. So briefly, this is, I put this up there for not only you all, for the benefit of the community to see this, but also for council members, because I'm sure you, just like I, get emails all the time about property taxes, especially once they get their bills. And we start to get those emails about high costs in property taxes, affordable living scenarios. How are we able to afford this, et cetera? So I keep those up. I like to provide this pie chart just to show really where, if you look at that, the city and the county portion of the property tax bill is really small when you look at the overall property tax bill that a resident gets in Mill Creek. Most of the stuff that is on that bill are levies that have been passed, or state and school levies, local levies, libraries, fire, et cetera. So I like to have that up there just so that folks can see that and maybe give you a little bit of a tool as council members to give that to residents as well when tax season comes around. I know we're a little bit past that at this point, but that has served me well over the last 3 months of this year. So I don't know if you can see, I know it's a little bit off filter there, but basically the highlights that I wanted to show from that 2023 budget, some of the high level stuff, we obviously dealt with the same scenario that the city of Mill Creek did with ARPA dollars coming in and trying to figure out how to spend that to best serve our communities here. We did a multitude of different things. I tried to narrow it down to some of the things that are relevant to the Mill Creek area, Mill Creek residents. So $8 million we used for ARPA allocation to increase access to childcare. And there's a multitude of ways that we did that. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Funding for the McCollum Park Pool, the demolition and the investment in the Food and Farming Center, which I know that Mill Creek has been involved in as well. That serves our residents. I'm really excited to see that moving forward. I know that there was some consternation with the pool going away, but I think the Food and Farming Center, once done, is going to be a really valuable resource for our community. So I'm really excited about that. And I want to thank Mill Creek for the partnership during the discussions that we've had over the last couple of years there. And then the other one that I want to highlight is at the bottom there. $215,000 we secured for the Hope Creek Food Bank, which is the Gold Creek Church. Their nonprofit arm is the Hope Creek Foundation, and they have a food bank that they operate, and a lot of their clientele come from the city of Mill Creek. $215,000 they invested last year with county money to expand their operation, and I was honored to go tour them about 3 weeks ago. They have a great team. Jennifer runs it down there, and she got to show me the expansion that they've done, and they've added multiple tents, giant tents now for capacity. It's more accessible for ADA accessibility. They now do, I think, 500 backpack deliveries to students on Fridays that the kids can then bring home and have for food over the weekends. I got choked up when we toured it because of the stories that they told and the amount of people, or kids really, that they were able to serve based on this investment. I really encourage the council to go tour that and check out their operation there and maybe get involved. We could definitely promote that a little bit more. our schools, particularly Heatherwood, but also Jackson High School, there's a lot of kids on free and reduced lunch there and a lot of kids that utilize the food bank, that families that utilize the food bank. And that their program that they have there is great. But the problem is the teachers don't necessarily know that it's available. So the more accessibility that we can give, the more that we can promote the program that they have going on there. I just encourage you all to go check that out. Next slide, please. So this is the last beefy slide before we get into some of the more substantive stuff here, but I did want to highlight that, not because I think anyone can read those tiny little circle charts that they have up there. I can't even read it and I'm holding it like an inch from my face. But mainly because I want you all to know that this is a tool that's out there for our community, but also for council members. We have for our budget transparency every year we update this, and it allows I believe that it's very user friendly to be able to dig through the budget. I know that most of the council members here, I've served with a bunch of you, are very focused on accountability and government transparency to figure out where our dollars are going, particularly how they're spent throughout the different departments. This gives a great breakdown. So I won't sit on this slide too long, but I just wanted to let you know that that's there. It's right on our county website. Okay, so now we can go to the next slide and get into some of the substance. So public safety was the #1 priority that we focused on this last year on the county council when it comes to the budget. We did a bunch of stuff. I tried to narrow it down. I didn't want to be here for 3 hours, but that was really where a lot of the debate and the back and forths were with what we wanted to do with our budget. It was all regarding public safety, and public safety means different things to different people. So we focused on, and I know Mill Creek is suffering in the same way that Snohomish County is when it comes to retention and recruitment of our officers. We, I think, are in a particularly difficult scenario in South County, Mill Creek, and the county because of our cost of living up here. So it's difficult to recruit and retain officers. So in Snohomish County, we created a new wellness program. We've increased pay. We have added additional benefits to try to help with that recruitment process. And that's ongoing and will be going on through the next couple of years as well. We've continued funding for our body camera program that we have going. We funded more social workers to accompany our officers in our Office of Neighborhoods program. I went out and did a ride along 2 days ago with our officers, one of the Office of Neighborhood officers, to go see how that program is working. And I don't know if Mill Creek has this in operation, but having a social worker out there partnered with the officer specifically for this program, it was really eye-opening for me. I got to see a handful of interactions throughout a 4 or 5 hours that we were out there, and to have social workers accompanying the officers to take some of the load off of the officers for some of the things that they don't necessarily want or are trained to do and deal with, especially when we're talking about the fentanyl crisis and the increase in opioid use, the mental health disorders that we're seeing now on the streets, the homelessness. It's really important that we give the officers tools to utilize, and those social workers, at least from my perspective, having gone out there, they've been a great tool. So we're going to continue investing in that program because I think that it's been pretty successful, but we haven't invested enough, and that'll be a focus for next year as well. We added a new sheriff's precinct near Payne Field, so that'll be helpful as far as response times go. Additional district court. So the last bullet points there are really around the judicial system. So we added a district court judge. We've added funding for indigent defense, for public defense. We've added prosecuting attorneys, 4 deputy prosecuting attorneys, because there's a backlog in our system, and that's a part of most of the complaints with not only officers and people that are in the law and justice system, but frankly the public as well. They expect a certain amount of justice, and when we have a backlog system because we haven't invested enough in the multifaceted law and justice system that we have, if there's a bottleneck here, it doesn't really matter how much we invest down the line. We have to start really investing all around the peanut butter spread approach to make sure that we can start moving folks through that system as they come. So that was part of that. We didn't get there all the way, but there'll be more investments in the next year. Taking the next slide there. So homelessness, mental health, and addiction was, in the same breath as public safety, the same conversations. And we're talking about additional social workers. Not only did we add the social workers for the Office of Neighborhoods, but we added additional embedded social workers for our general patrols as well. I think that's one of the solutions that we're really going to have to lean into. We are not going to live in a world where we don't have officers, but we also need to be giving the officers the tools that they need so that we can get everybody the resources they need. We can invest all the money in the world in housing, in mental health treatment facilities, in addiction services, but if we don't have the frontline workers to really navigate through that system, and we're leaning into our officers asking them to do too much, then it's not going to really fulfill the dollars that we're investing. We're not going to be really getting enough out of that. So I think that's a really important piece. The Blake decision I put on there before I created this PowerPoint a month and a half ago. So the state legislature has dealt with at least what the state's done. They've preempted both the city and the county from most of what we can do. So I don't want to hang out on that, but we can come back and have a conversation about that if necessary towards the end, because it does impact us. Just not a policy that we pass, obviously. We can go to the next slide. Environmental advocacy. So when I first ran for office, this was something that I was really passionate about. My perspective has changed as far as some of the solutions can be, but it's still a high priority for me. It's leaving the world a better place than we found it. And I know that that's the same for all of you. I have young kids. I think about the world that we're leaving, the animals they're going to be able to see, the trees that they're going to be able to climb through. And so I have changed in some of the policies and gotten a little bit more nuanced about some of the things that we've been able to do. But I'm excited about some of the work that we've done on the local level, because I think that's where the meat of the issue needs to be addressed. The state has tried things, the federal government has tried things, but I think really local governments are who are going to be able to really carry the burden here. So we have created a program. I voted for it when I was in the state legislature, giving the authorities for local governments to do this. And then I got to vote on it as a county council member to adopt it, the CPACER program, which boring and nuanced, so I don't want to stick on it too long, but basically it gives a tool to our commercial building owners to be able to become more energy efficient. And building efficiency is one of the low-hanging fruits, really, if we can incentivize business owners and commercial developers to take advantage of these opportunities, but it's not easy to do. And so finding ways to make financing easy for them, I think that's the goal of this program, because that's some of the low hanging fruit when it comes to emissions for us to be able to do. Obviously, the most emissions are in our transportation system, but the best way for us local governments, I think, to impact it is to help our business owners do the right thing. Fleet electrification. This year, Councilmember Nate Naring and I co-sponsored an ordinance to electrify our transportation fleet. There's some vehicles that you can't, some heavy machinery vehicles that you can't, but for the most part, there are a lot of electric alternatives to vehicles that we use for government programs. And so we are on track to become the first county to become fully electric as far as the alternatives that are out there. And that includes King County, but it'll be a race because we got ourselves on a path and we wait as the cars cycle out to replace them. And so we'll see, but the money has been set aside and the plan's been set. So that was a really exciting policy to work on and to get passed. And then I added the fish culverts on here. I know that Mill Creek is also has culverts that you'll have to invest a bunch of money in. Snohomish County there's a typo in there, but almost 2,000 culverts that we're responsible for. We haven't even inventoried all of them. We haven't even inventoried half of them. I've got just some of the rough numbers up there. But there's a lot of work to be done. We've been working on about 35 of them this year, and there's almost 2,000, almost 1,000 left even to just be inventoried. So it's going to be a multi-decade process, and I know that Mill Creek is suffering through the same thing. And I think that we've partnered together even in the 3 years that I've been on the county council to address some of your culverts, or at least one of them. But I put that on there because that's a big environmental issue that we all been dealing with. Next slide. So housing affordability, this is kind of the last issue that I'll focus on from this last year's budget. Snohomish County is the fastest growing county in the state. It's top 10, at least last time I checked. My data could be off, it was a year ago, but the top 10 fastest growing county in the entire country. And South County is where all that growth is happening, as you all know. Living in Mill Creek and leading in this city, this is where all the growth is in South Snohomish County. With that growth comes a lot of opportunity, but it also comes growing pains. And we see that in our transportation sector, but we see that no more clearly than in our housing affordability. I am raising 3 kids in Mill Creek. I bought a house 6, 7, 8 years ago, 2 minutes down the street in Mill Creek from the house I grew up in Mill Creek that my mom still lives in. I hope that in 20 years, my kids can be looking to buy a house 2 minutes down the street in Mill Creek. But at the rate we're going, that's not an option. They'd have to be an NFL superstar, and I'm way too, you can't tell probably from the camera, but I'm way too short for that to happen.
You
Or
could
be
be
a
a
singer
kicker.
or something. You could be a kicker. Not my son, maybe my daughter, but my son. Should see him on a soccer field. Anyways, so my point is we need to be really working on our housing affordability. And the way you do that is diversifying stock and adding additional stock. So one of the policies I was proud to work on this last year was adding more capacity for accessory dwelling units. This is in outside, so in Mill Creek, you don't have to worry too much about it. You all get to make that decision in Mill Creek, but in the county outside of Mill Creek and unincorporated areas, reducing some of the restrictions and requirements, which are allowing more DADUs, which just adds more diversity, more options for different types of families, different types of people to move in. And that's really how you are going to reduce housing costs generally, is just more stock, diversifying stock, which includes missing middle housing, densifying, and maybe talking about smaller lots. We do that through zoning, and we'll get into that when we talk about the comp plan a little bit. And that's some of the focus. That's, I think, where most of the focus has to be, is on the local governments and in unincorporated county zoning properly. And I added some of the growth targets there. Just, I know you cannot read them from there. I can barely read them from there. Okay, next slide. And then the last thing that we did this year that I was really personally proud of, it's a project that Councilmember Nate Naring and I have been working on for the last few years. So I'm an elected partisan Democrat. Councilmember Naring, who's the vice chair of the council, is an elected partisan Republican. And in January 6, 2021, y'all saw what happened at the Capitol, and Councilmember Naring and I had a friendship. We both have young kids. We're around the same age. Our wives are both school teachers. We both grew up in Snohomish County, and we talked about what was happening on January 6th as it was happening. And we really connected, and he said, we should say something publicly about this. And so we did. We wrote an op-ed, and it kind of caught fire as far as the public was concerned, because it was really just about trying to bring us together, trying to work through partisan differences, especially on local government. As you all know, like you don't get elected with a D or an R next to your name. You get elected by the residents to just work on city issues, and they don't care if the pothole or the apartment complex or the homelessness issue has an R or a D next to it. Well, him and I decided to go out and start doing tours, and we got a lot of teachers, government teachers, and Rotary clubs and Kiwanis clubs reaching out to us, asking for us to come speak about bipartisanship and working together. And that was great. We got some stats up there. We spoke at a ton of schools. We spoke to almost 30 classrooms, over 1,000 students. We talked to a bunch of community groups. But why I put the slide up here is because this year we started what we're calling the Building Bridges Tour, which is we've expanded past just youth engagement and now tried to include the broader community. And we've done a couple of these. We're going to do 4 throughout the year. We've done 2 now. We did one in Mill Creek at the YMCA, which at least a couple of you attended, multiple of you attended, and I appreciate you being there. We did one in Arlington last month, and the attendance is getting bigger and bigger. And I think it's an appetite. There's people in the community want to see people working together. And I think that's the point of me putting the slide up there, is just encouraging you all to continue to preach working together by partisanship, fighting through some of that, because at the end of the day, that's how local governments are going to get stuff done. That's why we are more effective than the legislature, why we are more effective than Congress. And it's because we don't have the R or the D, or we don't care so much about the R and the D. So I applaud you all for the work that you're doing on the local government area. Next slide. So this is just a brief slide about our next year's budget priorities. We haven't transitioned yet on the county council into the budget talks quite yet. We start those in like late July, August. But I wanted to put these up there because these are some of the initial concepts that I know we're going to be focusing on during this year's budget cycle. And that's early learning, which I do have one last slide on the early learning stuff because there's a little bit more than I could fit on this. But the public safety stuff, Blake decision, although we didn't ask anything specific to Blake, we are impacted by the Blake decision. We need to figure out where we're going to put investments. The state legislature in their Blake fix included a lot of money. And so that's going to trickle down to local governments. We're going to get to decide, or have to decide, where we put those dollars when it comes to mental health treatment, addiction treatment, if we're going to create new courts, those types of things. And so that's going to be an overlay over this whole budget conversation, is what we're going to do in the public safety sector around Blake and the implementation. Law enforcement investment for the same reasons, but still dealing with the difficulty in recruiting and retaining officers. And then treatment capacity, that's the same thing with the Blake decision. By the way, we are testing this presentation on you also. I'm sorry, it feels a little bit all over the place, but we're going to fix this stuff. You're my guinea pig, since this is a home crowd and I don't feel as worried to waste your time. Environmental policy. So we are going to be working on a tree canopy ordinance to figure out how to keep Snohomish County as green and beautiful as it was when we all moved here and the whole reason we moved here. So that's complicated and complex and gets political at times, but I just wanted to warn you all and let you know that that's a conversation that's happening on the county council level right now. As far as what to do about protecting our tree canopy as we continue to grow and develop and build housing. EV charging, we did invest in the fleet electrification. So we have the ability now to start having conversations about EV charging stations and whether or not we want to make those more publicly available to expand private use or encouraging our residents to start transitioning to electric vehicles. And so that's a conversation we're going to be having. And then the general GMA growth boundaries and comp plan update that's coming up over these next year and a half, 2 years. We're going to have year and a half now. We're going to have really specific nuanced conversations. We have over the last 2 years been having conversations about UGA line boundary adjustments and the general comp plan update, but it's coming down to the wire now. We're going to be actually having to take a big vote and have conversations. And I've had conversations with Mayor Holtzclaw about what we're trying to do up 164th, what that's going to look like for the future of Mill Creek. When you talk about annexations, or even if it's not annexations, when you're talking about what kind of developments happening right across the street, essentially, that's going to impact Mill Creek on a transportation level, on a general growth level, on state investments when it comes to public transportation, ST3, all those things. And so those are conversations that I hope you all continue to be very involved in. And you've all been great about emailing me and having those conversations. I'm planning on trying to do a conversation in our planning committee meeting on the county council level, where we include at least a handful of you quorum wise. I don't know how many we can have unless we cite it, but just getting Mill Creek and a couple of the other surrounding cities, Linwood included, to come to the table and have a frank conversation about what we want to see happening with that area, because neither the city of Mill Creek or the city of Linwood have jurisdiction there, but it deeply impacts both of you. So having those conversations and having you being a part of those is important.
Hey, Jared,
Yes.
what incentives are the cities being offered to annex into those areas?
So that's some of that state level incentives. Some of that is county. I mean, my incentive, I guess I don't know that the county is offering any type of financial incentive. But I do encourage cities to start to annex a little bit. There's different services that are available. You get more control of the zoning when you have annexation. Obviously then there's a cost to you and you have to figure out how you want to plan for it. So yeah, it's a tough conversation to have. And that's why I think we should all have it in a forum style circle. And the legislature has done some investment. I can't remember. I think it was Representative April Berg who passed a House bill this year that did some financial incentive. I think it had something to do with retaining a certain amount of property taxes or
Sales
something
tax,
like-
Sales tax, yeah.
big portion of
Thank you.
sales tax.
So there are some incentives being worked on at the state level. And it's on the city leadership to decide if those incentives have gotten you over the hump to finally pull the trigger or.
And so the reason I ask, are there monies set aside for incentivizing cities to annex into their
So from the county,
urban growth areas?
no, I don't know about the state, and I don't know that the state can necessarily give dollars, but they can do things like the sales tax
Rebates,
retention,
yeah.
rebates, et cetera. So I think that's what needs to happen is we could have that conversation on the record, and if the legislature sees, okay, well, we really want this area annexed in, but clearly the city is not ready yet to do it. What can we do to help them be more ready? And if the sales tax incentive that was just passed isn't enough, okay, well, maybe next year we gotta take it a little step further, but I think that's the benefit of having that conversation, including the city of Linwood, to just see, well, is this a theme? Is this a theme that the cities are all saying the same thing? And maybe then the legislature can address it.
Well, the more pressing issue is annexation is a ways down the road, whether it's us or Linwood for that area. And it's in between that time. You guys have to plan for it and
Right.
adopt the policies. And we just want to be at the table and part of those discussions, especially when it comes to the station out of 164th.
And there's numbers that are being decided by people that are not Snohomish County people, without naming names of organizations, PSRC, that decide what allocation, the growth allocations to give and what the targets are going to be. Well, that's not to just put them on blast, but that organization is not, it's heavily skewed towards a different county that's not Snohomish County. And so when we are at the table saying, actually, that doesn't really make sense for the way that we're growing. And yeah, we know Sound Transit's coming up, but Mill Creek has this plan for the future and Linwood has this plan and the county's doing this. We need to be more vocal about those conversations. I think the way to do that is to then come to the table as a group, the county, two different cities that are impacted, and all get on the same page and advocate in that way. Because the decisions are made whether we're there or not.
And it can't hurt that our county executive will be the president of PRCC,
That'll be helpful.
PSRC in 2025.
Right. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Last slide, I promise. Okay, so I promised an extra slide on early learning. This is one of the priorities for me that I've been working on for the last 3 years, four or 5 years, really, since I was in the legislature. But particularly since I've had kids. I have 3 kids now that I'm raising, all under the age of 5, all in the early learning daycare system. So it's become painfully apparent at how expensive and inaccessible childcare and early learning is. So the more I've done research on it, the more you find the trickle down effect economically, on public safety, on general life expectancy of human beings, are all tied back to access to early learning before you're even 5 years old. And so I've become very passionate about this issue. I said it vocally the last year that this is going to be a high priority when I become chair of the council, which happened this year. I've done tours of facilities all across the county now, both private facilities, the ECAP public facilities on the schools. I've done interviews with current and former early learning teachers to just try to figure out what the barriers are, what the issues are in the system. It's complex, as you can imagine, but we are going to be investing heavily in the early learning system, both with ARPA dollars, but also with ongoing funding. I hope under my advocacy on the county council, if I can get a couple more votes and a non-veto from the executive, that we become the first county in the state to put general fund investment into ECAP. Right now, ECAP, which is essentially low income incentive or low income, it helps low income students have access to early learning, lost for the word. That is invested fully or funded fully by the state right now. And there's not enough funding, and that's been an obvious issue, and the legislature has admitted that, but they haven't been able to find more dollars for it or get the votes to invest in it. And so we are struggling to get access to the families that need it. We're like, it's like 2,800 or 2,900 the last I checked, slots behind as far as how many families are eligible income wise for early learning slots, and yet they don't have them because we don't have the dollars. So the county can do our part to invest some of our general fund dollars into the system to get that number a little bit lower. I plan to advocate for that and to get that done this year. The other thing that we're going to be doing is working with Snohomish Tech Center to start a program. If you know what Snohomish Tech Center is, basically it allows high school students to go get work experience while they're in high school, still get their credits for it, and hopefully graduate high school ready to go into whatever job sector that they've been training in. They don't have a current program for early learning teachers, and so we're starting that through the Snohomish Tech program. We're starting an early learning teacher program there. We're helping with some initial investments and startup costs, so that'll be going on this year. And then community funded ECAP I just talked about. So that was that. Okay, so that was the whole presentation. I'm sorry that took so
Hey,
long.
Jared, question. So on the early,
Well, now I'm at the questions portion.
oh, good, I got a question. So on the early learning, you were just talking about the Snohomish High School, the training program. Is that part of your early learning, or is that something in addition to the early learning? In other words, are you looking for opportunities that would combine the two of them together? I know you have 7.8 million in ARPA funds, but you also mentioned there might be some county funds. Is that the Snohomish, is there also funds available in that as well?
Yeah, so that the 7.8 is separate from all the additional,
The
that was
Snohomish.
last year's budget. The 7.8 was last year's investment we did in early learning with ARPA dollars.
Mhm.
That was more for grants for some private facilities, for capital investments. That was some retention, teacher retention, but those were separate than what we were talking about. That'll be different dollars, different programs. And a lot of it will be general fund because ARPA dollars, you know, we only have a year more, as you all are
Right.
painfully aware. You got a year left to spend the ARPA dollars, and so that can't be to create ongoing programs because then you lose the funding. And so those really need to be tied. If you're talking about responsible governing, they need to be tied to ongoing funds. So I don't plan on making any of those programs attached to ARPA dollars because I think they need to be ongoing.
So are there going to be dollars available for capital funds to build facilities like this?
So right now there are for ARPA.
Yeah.
We have an ARPA pot of money set aside
Still,
for.
still.
Still for this next year.
Okay.
We just put out the notice of funding availability for privates to be applying for, to invest in capital. But honestly, that's not really the big issue. Because we've done a lot of surveying now, and the capital investment isn't really what people are running in, what the problem that people are running into. My son goes to the Goddard School right here by the Taco Bell down here.
Yeah.
And I talk to that owner every day about all this, and I bounce ideas. She probably hates me, but I just bounce all these ideas off of her every time I do the drop-offs. And she said her waiting list is the same size as her current enrollee list as far as students go. So if you just gave her a new building, she could fill it immediately with students. But I said, well, if the county could help you facilitate building a new facility, that help, right? And she said, I wouldn't even do it. If you gave it to me for free, I wouldn't do it because I can't hire the teachers. I need 37 teachers to run the school I have right now. I have 33. There's no way that I could fill the school with enough teachers to teach the kids that I have on that list. So it's not really about capital investment. That's why Snow Owl, I think, was so important, is we need to get more teachers invested in this. We need to get more male teachers. I'm on my high horse right now about this because I could talk about early learning forever and I don't get stuck on it, but we need to get more men in early learning as well. All the teachers are females. So half the population is all of a sudden cut out of your stream of employment opportunities because of the way that society has viewed childcare and teaching. So that needs to change, but that's a different story. But Snow Owl, I think, is going to help with the pipeline of educators. So it's really about getting more educators and incentivizing them by helping them get more money. And there's some other pieces, but it's really about who's going to teach a bunch of 4-year-olds for $20 an hour when they could spend one more year in school and go be a kindergarten teacher and make $70,000 a year and get summers off. And
Right.
It's a bigger, anyways, sorry.
Interesting.
Go off on a thing.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Councilmember Mead. Thanks for coming here and chatting with us. We appreciate it. It's nice to see you again. You touched on ARPA funds that still exist. How much is earmarked for the cities, and are there like we call them buckets here, I believe. So what are the buckets accessible for? Because I know we have a couple of facilities projects and a couple of parks projects that could probably use an infusion of cash.
Yeah, no, we should definitely have those conversations now, like sooner, like last month, but definitely in the next month or two, because the money, not to get political, but when the debt ceiling conversation happened in Congress, there was also a piece attached to that had to do with ARPA and clawbacks. It's now all these local governments, including Snohomish County, are scrambling to spend it all. And if you haven't seen that, you guys should read that and scramble to spend it all, because there's conversation at the federal level of clawing it back. So those conversations should happen really soon, because we're actively trying to earmark and get it out, because if contractors sign, then they can't take it back. But there's still money there. There's still a pot. I don't know exactly how much is left in the various pots, but if you're talking about, you said parks and facilities, let's have those conversations. I can get you the exact numbers on what's left. I don't even remember specifically how much was in each bucket, but we do the same thing bucket wise. So we should have those conversations.
Will do. Thank you.
Other question? Councilmember Paddock.
Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it. Just a couple things. One, thanks for the building bridges experience. I thought that was really eye-opening. It was, I really appreciated that exposure kind of to different ways of thinking, even if it made me a little bit uncomfortable. So I appreciate that. On the healthcare investment that you talked about and ECAP, how would our citizens learn more about that and opportunities for their families, their kids? Is there a place to go read more about that?
Yeah. So are you talking about opportunities for them to get into the workforce, or opportunities for them to get dollars from subsidies from the county and the state?
I'd say mostly the latter, but I
Okay.
think the former would be interested as well.
Yeah. So the dollars that were sent out during last year and the year before were CARES and ARPA dollars that were sent to help subsidize families, to keep them in, kind of like bridge them between the economic issues that everybody was struggling with the last 2 years, to keep them in their childcare slots. Because if you have to yank your kid, then you got to wait like 8 months, sometimes longer, to get on a wait list just to get back in. So it was really to help bridge people, but those dollars have dwindled. So there's no longer really subsidy dollars that are going directly to families to help them with the subsidizing of that. And that would be running out really soon anyways. So there's not really that much opportunity left for county dollars to help. But the more we invest in programs like getting more teachers, the more we invest in more capital just generally getting more slots, the lower cost becomes for everyone. And so I think attacking it in a holistic way, including cities, and we've had conversations, I've had conversations with your city manager about your facility. I know that's a hot topic, but you have a building over here that used to do similar work to early learning type childcare daycare things. And so there's other cities that have other things like that I've been trying to work on. And there are dollars for that. There are county dollars to partner to do things like that. And I think that would generally help families with lower costs and more accessibility and varied hours. The more slots you get out there, the more various different hours are offered for childcare. It's impossible for a mom who's trying to work an evening shift if all the childcare facilities only offer daycare until 5. Okay, well, then I can't even take the job if I'm not off by 5, So I think generally just addressing the issue is going to help lower costs for families at large. But as far as specific dollars, there's not much left.
Okay. I think we talk a lot up here about supporting our community, supporting our businesses, and childcare is direct support of our community and our businesses, right? You can't find people to work in your retail outlet if they don't have childcare.
And the chambers are to that end. The chambers are very invested in these conversations, and they say the same stuff, and they're willing to invest too. They're willing to help partner and put logos on things to help with some of the costs and all that. So it's really should be this big community approach. Yep.
Tree canopy. Can you talk a little bit about that? What you're thinking for this upcoming year?
So it's that we're in the preliminary conversations about that. It's actually Councilmember Dunn's ordinance, and it started out as more of like an initiative, so a conversation starter, at least from my perspective. She might say something different, but we now had a conversation about it. And it's really about trying to strike that balance of the need to protect our environment, to keep it this beautiful, clean Snohomish County. I mean, we're different than any other county in the state. And it's because we protect our environment. We care about the creeks and the lakes and the trees. And you can drive 20 minutes east and you could be hiking in a dense forest, or you could drive 5-10 minutes west and you're in the water, or you're in Everett. And so we're a very diverse community. So it's about striking that balance, at least from my perspective. I won't speak for any of the other council members, but the way I'm approaching the conversation is we've talked about housing affordability. We've talked about how we're the fastest growing county in the country almost, and we need to be focused on building density, but we also need to be weary of maybe developers who aren't necessarily as weary of keeping the trees where they're at and protecting that canopy. So but it does need to be the balance, because some people would like us to go too far, and some people would like us to throw away the GMA and not worry about boundaries at all. So I know that was not a specific answer to that, but we're in the preliminary, and I don't want to get anyone in any trouble by having the conversation prematurely, but that's at least my perspective on it is having to strike the balance of that we're going to have to cut trees down to build housing. So where do we cut the trees down, and how much buffer zones do you put around things? And frankly, you have to work with the developers on that to understand what a unit needs to look like and if it's a workable policy. And so it's about bringing groups to the table, and it's going to take time. This will be baked in with the comp plan conversation, so it doesn't have to be this calendar year even. But that's a conversation that I'm excited to continue having.
Sounds very similar to some of the conversations we've been having,
Right.
so I appreciate hearing
Yeah,
that.
it's a
you.
local government issue.
Call me during the day to talk about that further, because as a point of fact, I was heavily involved in the last word
That's
adopted
right.
in 2014, and new development is actually providing more tree canopy than is required under those ordinances. For the ordinance, when it was adopted, the county has to do an annual report of all the new developments that were approved, and new development is providing more than what is required.
Yeah, we just
So-
had a presentation from the tree, I think it was called the tree canopy presentation from our staff that did an analysis of the last 5 years. When did that pass? You said 2017?
2014.
2014. So the last 8, 9, 10 years of tree canopy policy under this current tree canopy policy. And it actually was really good news.
Mhm.
It was a lot of extra tree canopy based on what the developers were able to put in. And so if we do it the right way and we bring all the stakeholders to the table and have the competition, you can come out with a policy that does the right thing, and nobody's super happy, but nobody hates it, and it does the right thing. And that's how you get good policy. So
Councilmember, yeah, please do. Councilmember Duque.
Thank you very much for coming. I have a statement, an invite, a request, and a question for
Let's
you.
go.
So there's my thesis for you. My first statement is I absolutely applaud you on everything you're doing with early childhood, childcare and early. It's such a pivotal time, 0 to 5. And as someone who's now youngest is turned 6, But I remember my oldest going to the wonderful program that the City of Mill Creek Recreational Department had in the other building, and how much I missed that because it was a non-denominational, affordable option. And it was also, it wasn't a full daycare. It was just a couple hours, but even like those are actually really important moments because there's a lot of people who are looking for that socialization from such a young age. So I thank you for continuing your work, and I'm happy to support you in any and all ways when it comes to that. The invite, the request is that Councilmember Allison, myself, and Mayor Pro Tem Vignal are all part of the legislative committee representing our council, and we would love the opportunity to chat with you as we have done in the past with our state representatives to talk about these specific things. We're actually working on our own I can't remember what is the thing that we just removed? Yeah, our legislative agenda, but our statement of our
Standard
scope of
operating.
standard operating procedures. And we're talking about how we procedurally make sure that we're talking with you at the right time and hearing from you about what you guys are working on and when is the right opportunities for us to be speaking with you and checking in with you. So I think the date, and I just wanted to confirm you're starting to work on the budget now. So this would be that key time. So that's important for us to flag in our own process. So
Happy to do that, but if it's is it a council, like a public meeting?
no,
or
it's
is
it's just our own, committee, or, for us to be able to talk to you
Yeah.
about that. So I thank you because that's my invite. And then I was curious about economic development within Snohomish County, and then specifically your district. What are you guys doing, or what are you doing? That's very broad, but more, is there any highlights or things to think about? So you've talked about housing, but when it comes to businesses in that world.
So with in the last couple of years, the businesses have been struggling through the pandemic and closures and different requirements. And so we focused a lot of the CARES and ARPA dollars on helping stand up and keep our businesses afloat. So that was kind of a plug and a patchwork, but now we have to start understanding that we have a workforce issue. But it's not just that we don't have enough people active in the workforce. Our budget analyst just went to a retreat 2 weeks ago, came back and gave us a report that it's actually, we have almost a 1-to-1 ratio for available jobs versus people actively searching for employment in Snohomish County. It's like, I will embarrass myself and say the number, but it was almost identical 1-to-1 for jobs available and people looking for jobs. So it's not necessarily that we don't have enough people to work. It's that we're not finding a way to match people with what they need to do. So resource centers within the county, I think, would be helpful. Also cities, to be able to have this more close relationships with your chambers to say, here are the types of jobs that are available. Here are the places that you go to find the people for those types of jobs. I think we really need to start leaning in more towards tech centers like Snowile, not just for early learning, which is what I've been focused on with them, but I'm part of a generation that was told throughout high school that you go to college and you get a STEM degree, and if you don't, you're a failure. If you go anywhere else, you're a failure. You go to college, you get a STEM degree. And that has created an entire generation of people who went to college and now have useless degrees, or didn't finish college and now have tens of thousands of dollars in debt and think that you're either better than a certain job, or you were never told that was even an option for you as a job. And so we have this like mismatch of people and training and available skill out there. And so we need to focus more on getting into our high schools and working with counselors and the student population to let them know there's a ton of different routes out there. There's a ton of different career opportunities, and you don't have to go to college. Actually, I would argue, and parents can just put their earmuffs on, that you should not go to college or the way that our system is set up. You should figure out what you want to do first. And Snowile and tech centers like that, I think, are where cities and counties should lean into and invest dollars in to expand their programs, so that there are opportunities to then start matching that 1-to-1 ratio. That shouldn't make sense. If you have that many jobs, you have that many people, but we just haven't found a way to get them there and help them understand that that's the option. So I think that's a broad answer to your question, but I think that's kind of where my focus is leaning into that and focusing on coordinating people to help those businesses. So that's ultimately what they're asking for.
Connie, did you have any questions? Councilmember Steckler?
Jared, great presentation. We're learning a lot. Thank you for being here. One question I had was, I heard a timeline issue earlier, and so I wanted to verify on the pie chart you showed us in the beginning. I saw, obviously, my eyes go to arts and communities, and I think you had a $1.3 or $1.4 million allocation at the county level. I can't remember exactly what it was on the pie chart. Was that an ARPA allocation or was that county allocation?
You have to remind me, so there's two pie charts. I'm gonna give my aid crap about
Oh,
that.
sorry, first pie chart.
The first
one.
pie chart, okay. Where is the arts? I don't even see arts on
It
there.
was a tiny little sliver, but it was a good amount of money.
Do we
I-
have the presentation pulled up? 'Cause I do not even see arts.
Yeah, I believe.
But anyway, what is your question?
So my
about?
question was that it, was that an ARPA allocation or was that a county allocation?
No, so if we're talking about the pie chart, that's
That's
our budget from last year. That's our general fund allocation. So that pie chart specifically is just your property tax breakdown, if that's what we're talking about. And then the budget
I'm
dollars.
sorry, it must have been the next one. Or it wasn't the next one.
Okay. So this is yeah, exactly. That's what this is. This is the entire budget that we passed last year.
There it is.
I didn't intend for this picture to be used to have this conversation, so I apologize for how tiny it is.
Sorry.
But this, yeah, our budget is about $1.5 billion. Around roughly 300 million is actual county general fund dollars that we spend. The rest of it is grants and other things that come in. But that represents all of the dollars, the total 1 point something
Oh, okay.
billion. So arts, so you're asking about the arts, that is not ARPA related
No.
money. That is all. the
This
general
is
fund.
tax collection, so I
Right.
understand.
Right.
My mistake. It was so small, I thought it was, I thought it was something else. Never mind then.
Yeah.
My hopes got up. Maybe it was funds that were allocated to the arts.
Councilmember Duque.
Apologies. That slide, that was a resource and I like that resource. Is it available on what, do you have the website link
Yep, so
or?
it's just a Snohomish County website, so.
Yep.
Testing on. if I remember
No, it's
the
okay.
website, which
So
can
if I,
do, but
if I go on the website, what is the key term I'm looking for?
You're looking for the budget dash.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
One more. Councilmember Patton.
Actually, one point of clarification, you had talked about the dire situation with public safety staffing in Snohomish County, and I just want to make one clarification that Chief White, his staff, almost at full employment due to the investment that the city's made and also the culture that he has built that attracts people and makes people want to stay. And I think he should be applauded for that. So
Good.
just want to make that point of clarification.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's amazing to hear. It's been a struggle at the county side. We also pay a little, our pay structure is different and our comp comparisons are different as far as pay comp, but that's really good to hear from the group that y'all are doing so well. Is the chief here?
He was, but he's not.
He's great and responsive. I've had conversations with him throughout the last few months on Blake and I'm trying to get his feedback on some things. So you've got a good one in here. There he is. Hello, sir.
Good to see you.
Well, Jared, thank you for coming down and thank you for the great presentation. And I guess we'll hear a report from the legislative committee after you guys have a chance to talk further.
Yeah, thank you. As a recovering Mill Creek City Council member myself, I just want to appreciate you all for what you're doing. Thank you for serving my community that I'm raising my kids in.
Thank you,
for inviting
Jared.
me
Good to
here.
see you. You want to move us into our old business?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So the next item on the agenda is a resolution by our finance director to amend the Springbrook software license maintenance agreement, the master agreement that where we will be the intent here is improving actually the actual software internally to add more features and improve efficiencies in our operations and how that system is used across all the departments. So that $100,000 project will be funded by ARPA. And I'll hand it over to Irmina.
Thank you, City Manager Yamamoto. Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and to the audience joining us virtually and also in the chamber. So in last February 7 of this year, this council adopted ordinance number 2023-890, which committed about 2.5 million of ARPA money for various projects. That same ordinance requires council's final approval of contracts to implement any of the individual projects. And Springbrook software license is project number 12 in that ordinance. So just as a background, the Springbrook software has been utilized by the city since 1999. And in 2015, they did a major upgrade to switch the services from client-based or client-hosted services to subscription-based. And the subscription included finance, accounts receivable, community development, payroll, and personnel management modules. Now, however, in about April of 2016, the city management shifted the payroll personnel management modules from Springbrook to ADP because ADP at that time offered a more expanded functionality, specifically for recruitment, the electronic timesheets, and the employee self-service. Now, over the years, though, Springbrook has expanded more of their service or product offerings and made significant improvements. And so we are now recommending to revert the payroll, human resources management, and employee self-service back to Springbrook and add the fixed asset module as well. And so this would provide seamless data integration because then the data will then talk between or among accounts payable, budgeting, accounting, and reporting, since we have them in one enterprise system. It would also improve our control over the implementation, administration, management of the pay, benefits, and federal or state mandated programs. It will also provide us increased access to the reporting and analytics. And we would continue to get prompt version updates or enhancements, and we will have a more reliable and responsive customer service support. However, there is a disadvantage. The recruitment part of the module cannot be accommodated at this time. And so staff is looking at alternative options for that piece. And we'll come back to council for a report on that. For the project cost, the ongoing license fee would be $17,148 for that 1 year, and then the one-time cost, which would include the conversion, implementation, and training, would be about $60,674. Now, with the contingency and the estimated sales tax, the total project would be about $94,677 and some change. And just as a reminder, this project, the proposal that Springbrook provided to us includes a discount of 12% for our license subscription and about 14% reduced hourly rate for the one-time implementation cost. The ARPA funds that have been allocated for this project is about $100,000. So the fiscal impact, we are not requesting for any additional budget appropriation. We have sufficient funds and ARPA dollars to move forward with the project for the implementation and the first annual cost of the license. And then the subsequent ongoing cost will be the license of $17,148, but the contract provides about up to 5% of an annual increase. As a point of reference, our ADP contract right now is we're expecting about $20,000 annual for 2023. And we have budgeted for that cost in the 23-24 budget. And any subsequent licenses, of course, will be included in our budget development as we move forward. And so that concludes my report, and the proposed motion is to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the Springbrook Master Client Agreement and to appropriate up to 100,000 of the city's funds to receive, city's funds received under the American Rescue Plan Act to pay for the implementation of the project. That concludes my report, and staff's available for question.
Thank you, Irmina. Any questions? Councilmember Steckler.
Just a quick question. Could you explain to me the recruitment element that it doesn't provide? What do you mean by that?
So right now we are using Springbrook to do the recruitment, an automated recruitment. Part of that, that online portal for our recruitment is not available in Springbrook. So we have to have an alternative software to do that. So it's not just the job posting, but it's actually us reviewing them submitting their applications to us online. And so we are looking at other alternatives for a software to help us with that.
But we don't have one yet, do we?
No, we have one. We have the ADP.
And what if we just kept ADP recruitment? What would the cost of that be?
I don't know. We don't know at this,
So if we move ahead with this.
because I don't know if we can
Yeah,
take it out.
extrapolate it out.
Right.
So we have the
Out
94,000, but we don't know what a cost would be for the recruitment yet, do we?
No, but we're anticipating is that cost is not going to be too much, that we won't cover that. So the cost that we have here, the 17,000 is less than what we're spending right now for ADP as a whole.
I
So,
understand.
so the savings that we're gonna hopefully realize with a switch. So we have a 20,000 for 2024. And even with a 5% increase in 2024 for that one ongoing license, we have about maybe 2,000 to work with.
So is there a time-bound element to going to Springbrook, or can we find a answer to the recruitment costs before we go ahead and approve this? I just hate to approve this and then find out, oops, the recruitment element as a standalone is gonna cost us, making a number up, 20 grand. And, I doubt it will, but it'd be great if we could find a solution to that before we move ahead with Springbrook.
So
And maybe somebody over there would like to answer that.
So we could move forward with Springbrook because this would take us a while to do the conversion and implementation. We don't have to shut off our subscription with ADP until we're ready to do that. So if we're not comfortable with releasing ADP for that piece of just that recruitment part, we can continue to pay. But like I said,
That's 20 grand.
Right, but we've already paid for the full year for 2023. So we have 6 months to figure out the recruitment part of it, which I think maybe Laura can speak to that part of it.
Well, at this point in time, we use ADP as our base, but we are still externally going into places like LinkedIn and all your different advertisements. So the piece that we need is really not very large. I don't want to be held to this number exactly, but we are talking to one company and it's closer to about $1,200 a year.
Okay, is there any reason why you did not get that done now before we move to Springbrook? I guess that's the only question I have.
At this point in time, it's not as time sensitive. It won't be that big of a deal.
I think your HR director wanted to say something.
Yeah, distant from the HR perspective and using ADP for recruitment, I have been posting to other external websites like LinkedIn or NeoGov or something extra, because they did ask me, hey, Naomi, once this is out, are you aware that this is going to be out? It's more of a processing applications. And if we find something that's less money, I'm happy to do that because I have to post externally anyway. So what ADP is doing for us when we're posting and creating a posting for not only on our website, it's like a portal that candidates go into ADP to apply.
Mhm.
Okay, and then it also gives you the option to post to other places, which we're finding like Indeed or Career Builder are not really bringing the applicants that we want. So I'll do additional posting. And to be more defined, because the market is very competitive now, we're researching and we've been meeting with LinkedIn and also NeoGov. So I'd like to research that a little more to get a robust recruiting measure, because we do have to go outside of the box now with the job market.
And then also alongside of that, the amount of time that we will save just for Springbrook. So right now with ADP, when we process payroll, we have ADP doesn't talk to our Springbrook software. So we have to, there's a whole process of exporting the data, moving it in Excel and then getting it to accept it in Springbrook. So that's why we felt it's still really important that we move forward as is.
I'm a fan of Springbrook. I think it's a great move. I just was kind of surprised you haven't looped in the final solution before you came to us and asked to make the move. I was just kind of surprised by that. But I'm a fan of Springbrook. I'm surprised you didn't complete the last loop before you made this move.
Wait, can you clarify? We're already using Springbrook, correct?
Yes.
And so we're seeking, what we previously approved was an upgrade to Springbrook for the financial aspect, which is exactly what they brought to us.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
They brought to us and what we previously authorized the allocation of $100,000 for was to upgrade the Springbrook financial aspect of the software.
From ADP,
No, upgrade to the Springbrook system that we're currently using now.
right, and the Springbrook system was an upgrade from the ADP system, correct? Or am I wrong? Am I wrong?
Well, I wouldn't consider it an upgrade because.
Oh, I'm
we're-
sorry,
we're-
transition.
we're-
How about
we're
transition?
adding- We're reverting it
Yeah,
back.
it was a
to
transition from the
Springbrook.
ADP system. And the reason why we went with the ADP system is they did have the recruitment software built into it, which was an advantage. So the only disadvantage of Springbrook was it didn't have the recruitment, it didn't have some other element. Something
We,
else.
we also, other cities that have transferred out of ADP, if ADP finds out that you are going to be leaving, it's very hard to get your data. So we're trying to make sure everything we get all of our data before we start asking them, hey, if we pull these modules out and we only use this small piece of ADP, what is that going to cost? Because multiple cities have had instances where suddenly their data can't be shared and it's a little tricky.
You think ADP doesn't know you're pulling? out?
They don't know anything.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm convinced that this is a better mousetrap. It's not a contract renewal. It's more of a process upgrade to not just a better product, but a better process, better use of our time. So I'm prepared to make a motion. Adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute an amendment to the Ecology Surface Water Capacity Grant.
Oh, no.
Nope.
It's up on the screen.
I don't want to do that one.
Not to Ecology yet.
So we have one on our screen here. What's that all about? Approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the Springbrook Master Client Agreement and to appropriate up to 100,000 of the city's funds received under ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, to pay for the implementation of the project.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion?
I would recommend a revision to that of up to 95,000, saving $5,000 out for your recruitment fund, software. which
Just
should be
says
more than
up
enough.
to, doesn't say it's going to spend it.
No, I want to go up to 95,000 for the software of the city's funds, for the software for this project and 5,000 for, or that it needs to be the pay for the implementation of the project, including the recruitment software.
Is that a motion to amend the motion?
Yeah, I'm revising my amendment. to Just say that to pay for the implementation of the project, including recruitment software. So you could do all of it for 100,000, that's fine.
Uh,
Is that,
I have a concern though, maybe,
that a concern?
the city
Well,
attorney.
hold on a second before we get into discussion. Is there a second to the motion?
to the resolution?
No.
Amendment to the
your
motion.
To amend the motion. Is there a second?
I'd second that to hear what the concern is.
So if maybe the city attorney could speak to the original ordinance 2023-890, which approves specifically project number 12, and that's just for the Springbrook update and training. If we could then, how does that work if we're going to now change the scope of that project?
So right now, the motion that, the main motion, and we'll talk about the amendment, I'll talk about that in a second. The main motion was to appropriate up to $100,000 for that scope of work. And that scope of work did not include the recruitment. The amendment, if I understand it correctly, Councilmember Steckler, is to state that it would be up to 100,000, provided that the recruitment piece is included within that number. So, and that was seconded. So that's the current. The amendment would have to be voted on first, but the question that staff may have to answer is whether or not the recruitment can be done for the 5,000 and whether or not that needs to be a separate scope of work. So those are questions you may want to ask staff about and get clarity before you vote on any of those.
So there are a couple pieces here. So ADP, Springbrook doesn't offer recruitment because that is more of an HR specific action. So that is, the project was focused around the financials and the Springbrook software. So these really are two different projects. I'm a bit concerned with the way we worded the Springbrook project with our original ordinance. And then also we were planning on doing additional training for staff with that 5,000, depending on how much it came out to be with the additional funding that went up to $100,000 just in Springbrook.
So you're gonna need more than 100,000 to
No.
do recruitment as well. Software.
Maybe. But also the project didn't include that piece of ADP. So ADP just touches a piece of payroll.
I understand.
And so they're two separate areas.
Grant, can I ask a question? Is this motion to amend the motion consistent with ordinance 2023-890, where we specifically approved allocation of $100,000 for upgrade to the Springbrook system for the financial component? But
Amendment would be, what you did in 890 was simply, you had a list of projects and you had an up to, you had $100,000 allocated there. So it was for that scope of work, but the scope of work was not defined at that time. So the question, I think the issue when you were voting on, when you voted on that resolution, you were voting on basically here's what we're agreeing to apportion right now in terms of those dollars. Come back to us with the proposal, which is exactly what staff is doing. And where there's a bit of a disconnect, it sounds as though the scope of work does not include the recruitment piece as brought to you tonight. So the question then becomes whether to vote and approve that scope of work at the dollar levels that have been included in the motion, or whether to change that in some way. But I think the issue for that staff is raising is it's apples and oranges in the sense that you've got a different scope of work that's not included in this. So we really won't be able to get that out of this particular contract. So I'm not sure I've answered your question fully, Mayor, but
I think you have.
And I just want to point out, we don't know if we want to jump out of ADP just for that one recruitment piece this year or maybe next year. We are looking at other alternatives to see if there's something that would get the applicants we're looking for, get us better applicants or be a better base. But it may be something that we hold on.
Is there any more discussion on Councilmember Steckler's motion to amend the motion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to amend the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? Motion fails. So we're back to the original motion as stated on the screen. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstentions? Motion passes 6-1. Thank you, Irmina.
Thank you.
What? 5-1, I'm sorry. Forgot the chair is empty. Thank you. City manager, our new business.
All right, next item on the agenda is a resolution to authorize city manager to execute an amendment that will increase the original ecology surface water capacity grant from 50,000 to 75, and I'll hand it over to Director Todd.
I
Thanks.
think Councilmember Cavallari wants to make a motion.
Okay, so here we go again. Gotta hover the right place. There we go. Short presentation, short discussion, bringing you money instead of asking to spend money. See if I
Can you hit share screen, Director Todd?
will sit share screen. I could if I could find the button for sharing screen. Escape. Share up there. That's not it. Okay, there we go. Is that okay, Adrian? Can you see that?
Yep, looks good.
Thank you. So it's pretty simple. We traditionally get $50,000 grant from the State Department of Ecology every 2 years for doing our stormwater work. This is called the Surface Water Capacity Grant. You can apply it to anything you do to comply with a permit. The legislature this year decided to add to that funding. And so they took some money out of what's called the MOTCA account, the Monotoxics Control, something or other operations account, and increased it to $75,000. It's the same for all cities. So there's no competitive nature to this. Everybody got extra money. Because they just came up with this money late in April and May, they've extended the end date. Normally we would have had to spend this money and applied for the reimbursement by the end of March. Instead, they moved it into June. And so we simply need to amend the agreement to accept that money so that we can spend it. This money was already earmarked to go to our watershed company contract that you approved a few months ago, where we're doing the catch basin inspections. That's about $140,000. So instead of having 50 in grant funds for that, now we'll have 75. Questions?
Is that end date June 30th, 2023, correct?
Yes. We have to get this done tonight
Just
or
March?
next time. Yeah, we are up.
Oh,
against-
just changing the end date. We don't have to spend it by that time. Just
We
changing
have,
the end date.
we have to, it has to be spent by that time. We've already spent 85 out of the 140. So
Oh,
we have,
okay.
I have enough invoices to ask for 75.
So you already spent it. Got it.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah, not her end spending it. We already
Okay,
spent
great.
it.
Great.
Questions?
And he's
Done.
back.
Any questions?
Mayor, on that basis, I'd like to
Well, I
make a
want to do this
motion.
motion. No.
Adopt a resolution authorizing city manager or his designee to execute an amendment to the Ecology Surface Water Capacity Grant from 50,000 to 75 and change the end date to June 30, 2023.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Thank you. Oh, it brings it to me. Consent agenda is light tonight. City council meeting minutes of May 23rd, 2020. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda is approved 6-0. City manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. First report is, as you recall, I had the opportunity to introduce many of you, except for Councilman Steckler. We can do that after the council meeting. Introduce you to Mary Davis, our new deputy city clerk. Just a little bit about Mary's background. She was a former deputy city clerk with the city of Linwood, so we're happy that she chose her next door neighbor. Before that, she was a paralegal, and Mary currently has a master's in business administration. So we welcome Mary to the city of Mill Creek and to our team.
Welcome.
The second is just a little bit about our commission recruitment update. So I'll just give you an update. Boards and commissions been a discussion in the recent past, just kind of solidifying and changing some of our rules and policies. And so one of the big pieces, as you recall, is the recruitment part of it that we are planning twice a year. We've had an opportunity recently to, now that we have some vacancies across the AMV board, planning and our Civil Service Commission, to start working on how that recruitment process will work. And I just want to give you a highlight, kind of some things we've been doing. First, I want to say that those are posted, and those will all three end, those openings on June 13th. So
16,
June 13th,
16.
16, sorry, 16. Thanks, Adrian. So there are those openings still exist. And so we'll, after that point in time, we'll start working through the process of interviewing. Some of the things we've done in our effort to recruit so far included one, a recruitment graphic that was created that went on our city website, Facebook, Instagram, and the Nextdoor page. We sent a press release out. There was an email draft to the Mill Creek Community Outreach Group. It's a group that consists over a dozen of community leaders. They gather here at well, they used to gather here in Chamber. Now the table's not here. They'll probably gather at the City Hall North. But the library also plans on printing some graphics for bulletins for traffic that goes through the library. So we'll get hopefully some advertisement over there as well. On our website, there's a button called Notify Me that generates a listserv for those individuals who are waiting or who would like to be on a waiting list to whenever openings occur. From the recent analytics that we have now keep in mind these have not been. We don't know the time frame on some of these. I'm going to give you some numbers that I'm not sure how long these individuals have been actually on these waiting lists, but on the Arts and Beautification waiting list, there's 21 Civil Service Commission emails. There's 46 individuals on that list, and there's 166 on the Planning Commission email. So I think these are things that have accumulated over a number of years, recent years. So, but this gives you an idea that the actual process is working, but we'll have to kind of figure out how to improve that workflow and identify when those individuals actually posted on those. So, and then finally, word of mouth is another way. We're talking about other ways of actually recruiting, and that includes also putting the advertisement into the Mill Creek magazine and on our resident portal that was out with our community. So,
Councilmember Decay has a question.
So, forgive me for this, city manager. I haven't heard, except for the magazine and residential portal, none of the items you said sounded new to what had been happening in the past. I know about the Notify Me. That's how I first learned about Parks and Recreation Board some time ago. My husband, how he kept checking when there was Planning Commission. You mentioned the library flyers. That's always been there. It's not, I don't mean this as a disrespectful thing, but I didn't hear anything new from any of the items except for your last thing about magazine. Maybe press release is new, but I don't know how helpful. That's not really the medium for a press release from the city, unless it's part of like a larger. I'm curious what. Yeah, I didn't hear anything that sounded new.
I can't tell you exactly what it's going to have to have marketing communications speak to that, or maybe a city clerk.
Yeah,
but-
I can
but-
speak to that,
Okay.
Martin. I think this is an overall whole philosophy about recruitment, right? Where as the HR manager here, thinking about recruitment, we recently met with D2, who's been talking about our website and how all of us started discussions on how can we get our citizens, and not only thinking of potential candidates, but to drive engagement. How can we engage more with our citizens and volunteers? So one, the best recruitment is word of mouth, right? And we've been doing all those things that we have been doing before, but now after our 40th, we're here at our 40th anniversary, right, for the city of Mill Creek. So we need a new revitalization where we're saying these are opportunities. And it's the way that we position ourselves. And that's what I've been thinking and pondering over and over, especially during this very competitive job market. How do we engage those candidates that's going to be right for here at the city of Mill Creek? It's the same idea with the commissions, the board. So we actually even need to engage the younger professionals to start wanting to volunteer for these types of opportunities. That it is an opportunity of why you would want to be here. And it's not just the same people, and it's being recycled, right? So we really need to start engaging. So I would love for all of us to be inspired and to start really talking up our community and why this is the best place that we need to be here right now.
May I respond?
So
Well,
one thing I wanted to
this isn't a discussion item. I mean,
I just had a follow-up question.
ask a
If that's
question.
okay, and I can happy to take this off, offline to keep talking about it. I really appreciate the word of mouth thing. I think it's because of how it was presented. That's like, these are the new things that we're doing, or it felt like that when it isn't. And so that key piece that you said about word of mouth, I think what would be helpful for me as a city council member as we do this reports is to get the messaging about what it is you want us as your ambassadors, champions, representatives to be going out there into the community and talking about. I also know that at Party in the Parks and whenever there's activities, there's tabling, there's Mill Creek Festival, there's all those options, but I know we attend events. And so if we had what that language is saying, there's a June 16th, whatever it needs to be, I think in terms of those recruitments, if that's our focus, is we're focusing on word of mouth as something new or clear about the messaging, then, happy to support it. I was just, I was expecting to hear about not, and everything sounds kind of the same, but that's what I was going at. And that was my reference point in making sure when we talk about how we're recruiting new people, because I didn't hear anything about, diversity or, there's these other angles that or you mentioned young professionals, which is fantastic, but how will you be going to the engage, the chamber event tomorrow evening? It's at, Boston's at, is it 4 p.m.? 4:30 p.m. I should have known that one. I just had the realization, but so if there's young professionals there, if there's an opportunity there, they're, looking for those. I just want to make sure what would be helpful for me is to have that messaging of what you want us to be sharing and those deadlines and times and reminding us to go out there.
Okay, so maybe I should clarify a little bit. During the recent discussions about board and commissions, we established 2 different periods of time that we will actually go through a formal process. This is not formal. We started the discussions, city clerk and the marketing department, about how we can then start to think about ways or best practices or the process by which we would do this. And so now we're starting to explore what we're doing. So what I'm doing now is just explaining to kind of what we've done so far. Once we get to before October, when those expirations happen, or prior to that, we will have a process in place that will be more formal. And it will probably include a lot of things that are more new, possibly. Resident portal is one of the things that we're using or trying to utilize, but we'll have a lot more ideas as well. Right now, we're trying to fill these positions within these 3 different commissions and boards. So that's our main objective. And so we're, for lack of better word, kind of bootstrapping it like we've done in the past and just trying to make it happen right now. So thank you. And that's the end of my reports, Mayor. Thanks. And I'll hand it over to our HR manager to talk about processes and staffing updates.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start with the staffing updates and our recruitment and what we've been doing. So in the clerk's office, like Martin did let us all know that the deputy city clerk was hired as of June 1st. In our public works department, we just hired 2 seasonal maintenance workers. So you'll see 2 others coming in. One will be starting on Thursday and the other one next week on the 19th. We're also doing final round interviews. I'm very excited about this for our staff accountant, and that's happening on Thursday. In our police department, we have a new entry level candidate that was hired as of June 1st. His name is Denny Tran. We have onboarded and he's a great addition to our team here at Mill Creek. A lateral candidate in the police department is also in the process of background. And we have 2 officers that just that finished field training and now they're out starting and joined our patrol staff. So they're out on the streets of the city of Mill Creek. In terms of new processes, thank you, council, for adopting our new mission, vision, and core values. Thinking about our new performance, updating our performance evaluations to include our mission, vision, and core values. Also with our recognition event that happened and the committee being started up, we're also incorporating those ideas in with holistically with the city of Mill Creek of how we can have recognize employees that align with our values here. The other thing that we're doing, we just established again the safety committee to update our safety plan, and that's been underway. We're starting director and supervisor leadership training. Very excited about that. That will probably be happening this August for our supervisors. We're also going to implement for all of staff and update our personnel administrative manual and all our other policies. We need that upgrade now. So we'll be doing training for that as well. Onboarding and the benefit info, when I've been onboarding new candidates, they get a huge packet of information, really talking about all our benefits, which is really helpful for me as I start to recruit, and also telling our new candidates, new hires, how they could really invest into the city and what benefits it is to be part of our pension plan, our MEBT, and all that stuff. So they've been getting a lot of information. I've been getting really great feedback from them and say, hey, we really like you explaining all that, so that they have an understanding of what this really entails. I've been doing also these new hire check-ins. It's kind of like an informal thing that Naomi's been walking around City Hall and say, hey, how's it going, kind of thing. So I've been checking in with our new hires, make sure that they have everything, because retention is really important here. And also, if there's anything, we know that the job market is competitive. We have people coming in and out. So we're still offering all those exit interviews. I'm happy to do that because those exit interviews help us just get better at what we do. And like I said, when we were talking about the ADP and the recruitment process, we've been looking into governmentjobs.com as well as LinkedIn. I have meetings set up for that and really looking to get our recruitment in a more robust fashion. I really do believe that HR is a really important piece of where we are right now with the city of Mill Creek, and together we'll just do it. We could only do it together. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Stackwood.
Great presentation. I had a couple of questions. You've been bringing up LinkedIn and a few others. Have you looked at creating any job sites on LinkedIn, Indeed, or Facebook? Have we done any yet?
We have a meeting just next week to start to see if Mill Creek could have its own LinkedIn page.
Yeah.
LinkedIn's been doing a lot of different things because the job market has been changing. We connected to a really great customer service person, salesperson in LinkedIn that has a lot of contacts in Washington State. So really just seeing what the trends are. Government Jobs is a really good, another site that's, I think, is really valuable, especially that's what what we can really sell the city of Mill Creek to work for government jobs. But if any of you know something else that I need to look into, please let me know.
I do a lot of networking. I have over 4,000 contacts on LinkedIn alone. And one of the things that I found, and I have a couple of job sites, I've tried them, incredibly effective. LinkedIn is great. That's one of the best. And believe it or not, the second best for me would be Facebook. I hate to say it, but tons of people use it. So creating job sites would be very effective for us in bringing in a lot more candidates. But LinkedIn, you're right, that's the best and biggest, but Facebook, very, very effective. never try to come to the site, obviously.
Yeah,
But
and
I think that would be a very smart move as well, but that would give us a real leg up on a lot of other cities. So I would highly recommend the efforts in that area.
all right, thank you for that. For the LinkedIn, it's really valuable when you have a lot of connections. So a lot of connections is very helpful.
No other questions. We'll move on to communications marketing and Scott, I believe Scott and or Jody will report on the 2022 performance survey.
That would be Jody this round. Thank you. Just stand over here. No presentation today. I just wanted to give you a quick update on our performance survey. So it just went out. Hopefully you would have seen, hopefully you received the resident portal mailer sometime over the weekend and would see notice that we're highlighting the performance survey for this year. I just wanted to tell you that the survey is really similar to our 2022 survey, with the exception of a couple of changes that I was going to highlight tonight. First, we replaced the question about city park attendance with a new question rating the performance or the maintenance of city parks, streets, sidewalks, and medians. We updated event and tax information and reformatted a few questions for better continuity. Otherwise, it's about the same as you would have seen last year. You have the packet in front of you tonight. We intend to keep it this way for the next couple of years so that the data provides comparables year over year. We highlight the survey in our resident portal, as I just mentioned, and we did ads in multiple publications and on mailers, including a quarter page in Greet magazine, which is a dedicated quarter page ad for the survey. We'll encourage folks to take the survey at all of our upcoming events this summer with our iPads, so festivals and Party in the Parks. And we're gonna be offering some drawings to encourage people, as we did last year, maybe a little bit more elevated because we have a lot more sponsorship sponsors who are donating this year for some fun prizes. So please do tell people about it. And this is along the lines of encouraging people to get active and be active and promote everything that we're doing in this community. And this is a good opportunity to send people to the resident portal, to have them take the survey. We really do want our numbers to come up this year. And your word of mouth, you telling your friends and the folks that you see daily to go to the resident portal will really help us accomplish getting those numbers up. You can go to millcreekwad.gov/resident to get to the portal and the survey. And there's more information online about that. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Councilmember Steckler does.
Yes.
One question on number 7, and maybe I'm confusing this. There's another survey coming out, but I know with the Dobson Rembler Catholic Church properties, we were going to reach out and do a survey of our residents regarding the various options that we were looking at providing. Was this the survey that we were going to do that with, or is there another survey that we're going to be doing?
This is not the survey for that. However, folks do tend to write in information concerning that if that's an option, but Director Todd will be, and the communications department will be working with, I can't remember the name of the company. EDA.
So there's
on all
another
of that
survey coming
outreach.
at a later
Absolutely.
date for that.
Yeah, we hope to, with the resident portal and with all of this that we're doing, though, we hope to bring everybody to that one source. And then we give them the opportunity so that that survey will actually be on the resident portal. This survey will, any park surveys, any of the other things that we're doing for the outreach for all those upcoming programs will all be there. So that's how we're driving everybody to that site. So the more that you help drive everyone there, that gives us the opportunity to reach all of them for all of these other initiatives.
Nope, I don't think so.
Thank you.
Jody.
All right, the next report will be by Director Todd, just giving an update on our Planning Commission and Council meeting that will be held, our study session next week on the comp plan. And so, Director Todd, I'll let you.
Yes, thank you. You notice that we removed the table. So next week we'll have a mosh pit here. No, we're going to have some other tables. The idea is to make them, we're going to use more conventional rectangular tables. So we've got room for both the planning commission and the city council to sit at one table together. It's going to be a kind of an interactive workshop, starting off with some education about the process involved, how the comp plan fits into the GMA, how the county goals come into that, how the city then will react with our comp plan. A bunch of it's going to be education up front, hopefully not too dry, but we want to make sure everybody's got the same basic understanding of the fundamental reasons why we're doing this. Talk about the plan elements that are going on. There's some new plan elements you've heard us mention before. We'll make sure everybody understands what those new ones are, and also talk about the ones we'll be updating. We've been talking along the way in the last couple of months about how the impacts of some legislation. So we'll do a little bit of recap on that. And then we'll really talk about the process that we'll be going through over the next year and a half to get to a completed comp plan. The roles that we'll play, from the consultant to the staff, to the council, to the planning commission, to the community itself. How do we all work together to get to a comp plan that we're all proud of? And it's not just something that collects dust on the shelves, but it's going to be a plan that we're going to enjoy working with and use as a reference for the next 20 years. We will give you some preparatory information, at least an agenda, maybe a few things to read, but not a really heavy packet. Really come expecting to roll up your sleeves and listen and learn. And we'll have some flip chart exercises where we're going to kind of reach out and try to get a sense of the things that are important to you as we go through the process. We'll talk about the touch points where the planning commission will be working with the consultant team, and then also where the council will be checking in. And so you have a chance to see that schedule and see how it lines out over the next 18 months. And it's about 90 minutes. And then we'll have a short number of other items in our council agenda for other things that will be happening, but really figure that we'll open up the city council meeting, open up the planning commission meeting as a meeting within a meeting, much like we do for public hearings. Do that for about an hour and a half, and then maybe a short amount of other business. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Those are in the staff reports, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I got several items. I'll pick up where Director Todd left off. I included a couple bits of information that, as we start the comp plan process, might be interesting to dive into. One was a presentation I heard Mayor Mason Thompson, Mayor Bothell give the end of April. Hard copy of his transcript of the speech was included. I thought it was very thought-provoking. And then the second item was the link to Gil Penna, guest speaker at the Puget Sound Regional Council General Assembly, and it was a fascinating presentation on just how you think about cities and how cities grow. The short version is he's the executive director of a nonprofit called 880.org. The fundamental premise is if you design a city for 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds, it will be a good city for all ages. His presentation is about an hour. I watched it again today for the second time. I would encourage you to watch it, and I think it'll put you in a good mindset as we sit down at the table and start thinking about what we want our city to look like in 20 or 30 years from now. Several other things, echo Barb's comments on the Memorial Day ceremony. Great job by everyone. It was well attended. The weather cooperated. It wasn't too sunny, but it wasn't too cold. Tomorrow, and the South County Mayor's meeting, which is significant only because this is the first time this group has met in person since COVID. So we're getting together in Briar for pizza tomorrow. Thank you, Director Todd and staff, for helping respond to a constituent inquiry I had. I'm not sure if everyone got it about the parks, restrooms in the parks, and whether or not, what's our policy on keeping them open. But we got back to that person, and I think we gave her a satisfying answer. Let me think. Oh, so I attended our virtual homeowners association meeting for Brighton HOA last week. And I need to mention that the rumor came up and was mentioned by someone that about the potential for a dog park at Cougar Park. So I just wanted, I updated them on where we're at or where we're not at in the process. I will report that I think we had a quarter of our homeowners. So we have 101 home lots in our development, and I think we had a quarter of the homeowners on the call. They all echoed the concerns about parking with Cougar Park, and I think you'll hear a lot from them if the idea of a dog park starts getting much traction. So just leave it at that. General Assembly, I think the main take home from that is what I already mentioned, that presentation by Mr. Pennell. So other than that, it was a good time to elected officials. We elected the officers for next year. The mayor of Paulsville, I forget her name, is going to be the president of PSRC, and Executive Summers will be the vice chair. And let me think, I think that, did I talk about the strategic plan last time in my report? That we're going to be bringing the 3 consultants to council for a study session to meet the consultants, and so the council can go through a selection process and interview process. We'll be doing that at the end of June. So we just, Mayor Pro Tem and I just got the background information on the 3 consultants. So we're going to try to get that out well in advance so you can have time to go through it and look at their websites and come with lots of questions on the 27th. So I think that is what yep, that's what I had. Councilmember Cavalieri, any report tonight?
No report. Parks Board meets tomorrow. I'll update on the next meeting. And just as an FYI, the Seattle City Council just voted today to reject the state's Blake fix. So gravity still doesn't exist in our neighbor to the south.
Councilmember Steckler, any report?
A couple things. I wanted to make a couple more notes on the General Assembly, but a couple of housekeeping items. On the, I think you made the comment, Mayor, that this really isn't a discussion item. So maybe we could open up a discussion item on the agenda sometime in the future regarding our efforts for, gosh, I'm sorry, recruitment for commissions and boards. I think there's some ideas that we might have for that and stuff, but I took my finger off the button because when I heard him say this isn't really a discussion item, maybe we could open that up on the agenda in the future, because I think we have some ideas and stuff that might be good for the council to give you some thoughts and some suggestions for future ideas, because I think they're when we talk about, well, what's new, maybe we could bring up a couple of new ideas to you, and some other council members might have those as well. So that was one suggestion. The other one, before I forget, Councilmember Paddock reminded me as well, could we please get a photo with Councilmember Mead before he goes, because it's not often that we get someone of his caliber and prestige in our council chambers. So I'll even put my jacket back on for you, Councilmember Mead, but definitely want to get a picture with you. I had the opportunity to go to the General Assembly with Councilmember Takei and the mayor as well. And I really enjoyed this, and which is unusual for me. I actually took quite a few notes and on a few different things, which I thought that Bruce Harrell was our opening speaker, the mayor of Seattle. And what was interesting, what he spoke on, the mayor, I was kind of, what's he going to talk about? He's going to talk about, talk about housing and what you're doing with housing. No, he actually spoke about the critical need for the transportation connections, not only within Seattle, but all the outlining cities throughout Puget Sound, and how important it is that we connect all of these cities. So as we grow and grow and grow, we never really thought about putting that infrastructure in for transportation. And that is something that is absolutely critical. So as we're adding all of these bus lines and blue lines and turquoise lines and green lines, they are critical for us to actually be able to move around in this metropolis as we start to grow at the level at which we're growing. The other thing on there, they did talk about the annual update on their plan. And what was really interesting was we've been hearing about all the housing plans and goals. Really, we've been hearing about the goals. And by this year, you got to be at this, and this year you got to be at this in housing. And what they really realized was they were really good at setting those 2030 goals, but they really need to establish plans to reach those goals. And that's really going to be the focus going forward, is we need to work with our cities and different areas on establishing plans to help them hit these goals, because they were really good at saying, here Mill Creek, here's your goal, and here Mukilteo, here's yours. We talked, I think it was Councilmember Mead mentioned, they did talk about the Puget Sound growth, especially Snohomish County. They did pass the budget. I was really happy to hear that Dave Summers, Mayor, mentioned this, is the new VP and President-elect. That means, a couple years from now, Dave Summers, who definitely has near and dear to our hearts, will be the president of the Puget Sound Regional Council. And then the speaker was, I totally agree with the mayor. He was fascinating talking about this 8 and 80, but really when you think about building a city, and we were talking about the DRC, what we want to put in there, the whole idea of just whatever you do, make it multi-generational. That was the word that the mayor used at the end of the meeting. Make it multi-generational. And that's a secret to success. That's the magic pill. If you build something that, if you can, that is multi-generational and whatever that facility or series of facilities are that can fit the needs of not just one generation or this generation or that group, but multi-generation. And he didn't say it was by interest, okay? It was by generation, it was by age group. But to find something that can fill those different age groups, you're gonna build a incredibly strong city or community. That I thought was really good. It was a great meeting and it was really the crappiest lunch I've ever had in my life. It was absolutely horrific box lunch. Worst I've ever had, worst. And I love free food. I couldn't even finish it. It was so bad. The orange was the best thing, but I have to say the meeting and information was excellent. I really appreciated being able to go to that. So it's my presentation.
Councilmember Allison, any report?
No report.
Councilmember Duque?
Everything that the mayor and Councilmember Steckler said about that PSIC, absolutely. If you, please watch that presentation. Gil is an absolute speaker, wonderful speaker. I had followed him before because he's originally from Columbia and he talked about a lot of the projects that I know about because when I would go visit, and also I have family in Toronto, so I know about his work there. So fantastic. I thought my sandwich was good, but I got a different one than they did. So I just wanted to say that, but it was fantastic. And no additional report because you guys said everything wonderfully.
Councilmember Paddock?
No report.
That brings us to audience communication. In the chamber, anyone on the line like to address the council going once, twice, 3 times? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn the meeting and then we can do photos after the meeting. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we will be adjourned at 7:52 p.m. See you next week. Come on.
Who's got a good camera phone?